Welcome to another edition of E.W. Jackson for President of the United States. Well, folks, today is September the 27th. We are counting down. September 30th, by midnight, September 30th, we close off our first financial reporting period. I announced and filed on July the 14th. And so what this reporting period looks like is going to have a great deal to say to the American public. I don't know whether the mainstream media will pay any attention to me at all and to what my financials are. Maybe if they can find something negative to report, they'll say, his financials aren't good. Well, it shouldn't be surprising since they basically ignored my candidacy from the very beginning. But that, be that as it may, I want to express to you the urgency of the moment. I've got 3 days to reach my goal of $150,000. At that point, it will be 10 weeks. It'll be about $15,000 a week. That's pretty good. That's pretty good for a candidate starting from scratch and getting absolutely no media attention. That's pretty good. I'd like to see that enhanced and increased in the next quarter and get that up to triple, quadruple that, frankly, because that's really what I need to raise. I need to be raising not $15,000 a week. I need to be raising $50,000 a week. So we're headed in the right direction, at least because we are raising money, but it has been an uphill climb because, again, of the media boycott and blackout. So be praying for that. And go to our website, ewjacksonforpresident.com, and make whatever contribution you can right now. And do it as often as you can. Remember, you can max out at $3,300. No single individual can give more than $3,300 to a campaign, but you can certainly do that. And if you're a couple, you can give $6,600 maximum. So, and my wife and I have maxed out to our campaign. Obviously, I wouldn't ask anybody else to do something that we have not done. But that's the maximum that we can give. Well, actually, I take that back. I've been told by my lawyers that the candidate can give an unlimited amount of money to his campaign. The problem is I don't have an unlimited amount of money. So I'm limited to the amount of money I can actually give to the campaign. But needless to say, we're certainly doing our part. You can rest assured of that. Okay, so with that out of the way, midnight, September 30th. September 30th that's Saturday night. So this is Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. We've got 3.5 days. 3.5 days to reach our goal. And I don't know exactly where we are now because, of course, money's coming in every day. So believe me, I'd love to exceed our goal. I'd love to come back and report to you come Monday. Not only did we hit the $150,000 mark, we went beyond that. So don't concern yourself with getting there. We're a good ways from there, and we've got 3 days to get there. So do the very best you can. Be as generous as you can. Remember, look, and by the way, I really believe this. And Galatians chapter 6, I believe it's verse 6. Says, be not deceived, God is not mocked. Whatever man sows, that shall he also reap. I believe it's 2 Corinthians chapter 8 says, he that sows bountifully shall reap bountifully. And look, I don't mind saying, folks, and I don't say this just for effect, it's the truth. My campaign really is a ministry because what we're doing is seeking to minister to the people of the United States of America that we must come back to God. That is the essential problem we have. That's why we are in a cultural meltdown right now, because Americans are turning their backs on God. And as they do, they sadly sow the wind and reap the whirlwind. And so my campaign is really an extension of my ministry. It is a ministry to the United States of America, a ministry to the people of America. And the message is simple. Come back to God. Come back to God. Repent of the sins of our nation. Turn away from this moral depravity and insanity that has gripped the nation and masquerades as some sort of moral superiority. We've got to turn away from that, and we've got to come back to Almighty God. Right now, our nation is being led into idolatry. Sadly, we are being led into idolatry. I'm amazed, and this is a small thing, and I don't mean to pick on this particular guy. I don't know him, but I'm amazed that people refer to this guy Charlemagne the God. And I actually say, yeah, Charlemagne the God. I mean, he's not a god, but it's just part of what we accept now in normal parlance. I mean, I don't know whether his name is Charlemagne. I don't know what his real name is, but whatever his name is, that's his name. But it's just part of a blasphemous, God disrespecting culture that is trying to overwhelm America's Judeo-Christian cultural perspective. And we've got to push back against it, not with hatred of those people. Like I said, I don't mean to pick on him or pick on anybody for that matter. I talk about Barack Obama. I don't mean to pick on him. But you have to point out when people are manifesting these qualities that you know are inimical to the best interests of this nation and are part and parcel of the cultural degeneration that is happening in our country. I mean, you got to point it out. I mean, it's happening across the board to people whose names we don't know, obviously, but people who are known, who are influencers, those people are having an impact on the overall culture. They are helping to speed the degeneration of American culture. And so my campaign is really a ministry to America. I've said that the next president of the United States has got to be a spiritual and cultural leader as well. Now, I know the left will just go apoplectic when they hear that because, again, they accused me before of wanting a theocracy. By the way, one time I caused a real internet stir because I said, no. I do not want a theocracy. And I don't. I really don't. We don't have an official religion in our country, and we don't want one. Lord knows we don't want one. But culturally, we are a Christian nation. That is our culture. That is our background. That is our orientation. That is the well from which we spring. And so to deny that is to just lie to yourself and to lie to others. But we don't want an official religion because we know the moment we do that, now you have government trying to impose upon people what they should believe, and we don't want any part of that. Nevertheless, we are culturally a Christian nation, and that is worth preserving. So my campaign is about preserving that. In fact, I say it's worth preserving. Let me go beyond that. Either we preserve it or we commit societal suicide. So let's be very clear. Either we preserve it or we commit societal suicide. And that's where some people are trying to take us, into societal suicide. Well, I got a few things I want to talk about today. And one thing I want to talk about, which I haven't really gotten into, but I felt really led to get into this because I want to make something clear. You know, the United Auto Workers, of course, is on strike. Now, not all United Auto Workers are striking. Not all the workers in the auto industry are striking, but they're trying to get more of them to strike. And I don't know what the percentage is now, enough that the three American automakers are concerned about it. But here's what I wanted to say about this strike, because I thought it would be important to clarify this. And you might be surprised to hear this. You know, I am not opposed to unions. I'm not. Never have been. So, well, wait a minute, unions, I know. We'll get into that in a second. But, folks, the fact of the matter is that when industries began to rise and grow in America, had it not been for unions, the corporate moguls, the robber barons, would have just treated American workers like slaves. And they were doing it. They were doing it because they had the money, they had the power, they had the leverage. And the only counter to that money and power and leverage was for people to begin to unionize and to begin to organize to try to counter the power of these corporate giants that had so much control over so many people and so much money and so many politicians that they were virtually untouchable and they could do whatever they wanted to do. And remember, they worked people for long hours. They put children to work in factories in dangerous conditions. They had no insurance. They had no medical. They often built these tenement slums for them to live in, which were literal, well, I shouldn't say literal, but certainly figurative hellholes, because they were places of crime and chaos and filth. And of course, in the early stages of the Industrial Revolution, remember, we hadn't yet perfected our whole sewage treatment systems, and people often lived in neighborhoods where the sewage wasn't handled properly, and so disease spread. I mean, it was a mess. It was a mess. And then on top of that, it was very difficult to earn a living wage. You basically earned a subsistence existence working 10, 12, 14 hours a day. Now, that's really part of the history of our country. It's not nice. It's not laudable, but it's true. And the unions arose to counter that almost omnipotent control by industrialists over the manufacturing process and over workers. There's nothing wrong with that. And in fact, the right to do that is part of our constitutional freedom of association and right to assemble and all of that. I have no problem with any of that. I really don't. I really don't. So let me tell you what I do have a problem with, and then I'll get back to the United Auto Workers strike in a second. I do have a problem with closed shops. Closed shops have been a curse and have been one of the negative aspects of unionizing that it really became pure evil because, of course, closed shops not only discriminated against anybody who didn't want to necessarily be a part of the union. In other words, a closed shop is if you're not a member of the union, you don't work here. That's why many states today, I live in one of them, Virginia, has a right to work law because we didn't want people forced to join a union in order to be able to work. That's just as bad as industrialists having absolute control and workers having no leverage and no bargaining ability whatsoever and being turned into virtual slaves. I mean, both of those are deep ditches on the road, and you don't want to fall into either one. So the closed shop where you are forced to join a union was also used to exclude black folks in the early stages of unionizing, where black people couldn't get work because of segregation and racism and all of that, and if you couldn't join the union, you weren't welcome to be a member of the union, so you couldn't get a job. So it has an ugly history on both counts, both forcing people to join something that they don't want to join and excluding people on irrational bases like race or whatever, or your national origin. Because, of course, there was a lot of discrimination in our country against people based on whether they were Italians or Irish or what have you. That's part of the ugly history of unions because, of course, we know that all human institutions are subject to corruption and abuse, all of them, which is why we as Americans have to be very vigilant about our government and keeping it within its constitutional limits because the tendency of human beings is to abuse power and authority. Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Lord Acton, I believe. So unions are no different. They're subject to corruption too. So, you know, these Democrats are just, oh, yes, the unions, the unions, the unions. Yeah, well, the unions, frankly, just as always happens in life, particularly where human beings do not have a higher authority that they answer to restrain them in their quest for power, their ambition, their drive for self-satisfaction and self-realization, will always take what begins with noble purposes and convert it into ignoble purposes. So yeah, the union starts out, we need a counter to the power of these industrialists who are abusing people and treating people like slaves and providing people without even a subsistence living, even though they could afford to. And you see where, and colluding often with each other to keep wages low. So we had to put some laws in place to prohibit monopolies and prohibit that kind of collusion among businesses to suppress wages and all of that stuff we had to deal with. But the unions, once they actually came into power, started to do the same thing the industrialists did, which is started to abuse that power and started to use it for political purposes. The purpose of the union was and should be to negotiate with the company for the purpose of getting the very best wage and the very best benefits possible for those workers. That should be it. And there ought to be room left for individual achievement. That's the other thing unions often do. They suppress individual achievement. They don't want anybody standing out because they want everybody treated the same. Well, here again, that is not the free market. So unions, of course, like any other institution, are subject to abuse. So I'm not against unions in theory, but I'm against what they've often done. Now we've got a new dimension to the unions, and this is not new. I guess the ideological development has made what unions are now doing seem new. But of course, unions were very early on subject to communist and Marxist influence, and many of them were spurred on by Marxists and communists who saw this as an opportunity. And he said, well, how can you support unions? Well, look, folks, they did the same thing with the civil rights movement. Here again, all institutions are subject to corruption. They're subject to bad influences. And we know that communists moved right into the civil rights movement and made a home there and influenced many people there, turned many people into doctrinaire leftists. And I mean, they've been doing that early on with Paul Robeson, for example, W.E.B. Du Bois. Both became communists because they became convinced that justice for the black man meant that you couldn't accept America's capitalist system and free market. You needed something different, and the communists convinced them what you need is communism. That'll give justice to black people. So two of the most prominent American historical figures, Paul Robeson, the Renaissance man, the great genius, football player, writer, speaker, orator. This man was brilliant, great physical specimen, great intellectual giant, became a communist, convinced that that was the only answer. W.E.B. Du Bois, probably one of the most brilliant minds America's ever produced, left the country, became a communist. So I said all that simply to say, in fact, that excerpt I read from George Washington, he said that no institution can be held inviolable against the sweeping torrent of moral corruption and boundless ambition. Now, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but I've got the quote pretty close. Unions are no different. So when they serve their proper function, I think they have a very good role in a society. But when they get beyond that, like the teachers' unions have now, America's teachers' unions they're not unions for teachers, they're unions for Marxist ideology. They're trying to produce social and sexual revolutionaries. That's what they're really trying to do. Or maybe I should put it this way, cultural and sexual revolutionaries. Because, of course, they're teaching a lot of this Marxist theory stuff, not just critical race theory, but critical studies. In other words, you critique America to the point where it becomes a byword of destruction, racism, injustice, pollution, you name it. Everything negative you can think of, that's what America becomes associated with. And that's critical studies. It started with critical legal studies, and now it's going, of course, to critical race theory, but they've got something they're now calling critical LGBTQ and critical feminist. All this stuff is meant to quote Marx, to ruthlessly criticize everything. Now, why are you ruthlessly criticizing everything? You are ruthlessly criticizing everything to bring all the institutions of the culture down and create new institutions based upon a new set of values. And so unions are subject to the same corruption, and we see that with the teachers' unions now, that they're pushing the sexual perversion agenda, they're pushing this racial agenda, they're pushing a radical feminist agenda, they're pushing destruction of the family agenda, because they don't want families controlling their children. Did you hear the the Secretary of is he Secretary of, yeah, I think he's Secretary of Education, saying that he's disturbed by parents acting like they know what's best for the acting. You know, you have to laugh at this stuff to avoid crying. Acting, he is upset by parents acting like they know what's best for their children. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. Parents, I thought I had that article. Parents acting like they know what's best for their children. And he doesn't like that. You know. Wow, I thought I had that. Well, apparently I don't. But at any rate, it's out there. You just, because I wanted to, because this guy is he's a piece of work. Yeah, he really is. He really is. I can't believe I don't have that piece. But at any rate, you get the point. Oh, wait a minute. Well, this is not the article, but this is the guy. Yeah. Yeah, Secretary of Education, Miguel Cardona. Yeah, Secretary of Education, Miguel Cardona. That's the guy. That's his name. He's upset by parents acting like they know what's best for kids. So in other words, if parents actually think they know what's best for kids, or if parents are espousing a viewpoint that they know what's best for their children, they're only acting, because that's not real. That's not real. They're only acting, because they don't know what's best for their children. Secretary of Education Miguel Cardona knows what's best for their children. Well, see, the school unions, the teachers' unions, support all that. They are anti-parent, anti-traditional family, but they're supposed to be unions that are looking out for the teachers. They're not looking out for the teachers. They're advancing an ideological agenda. So, all right, let me come back to United Auto Workers. They do have one well, they probably have more than one, but here's the one I want to light on. A very powerful point, because my understanding is they are not now earning a living wage. Of course, they want to go through a 32-hour work week. I'm not too keen on that, but I'm not a member of their union, so that's a negotiation between them and GM and them and Ford and them and Chrysler, because they're negotiating with all three of the major American auto workers, American auto companies. But they've also made the point that they are competing with these electric cars, and that these, like Tesla, are not unionized. There's a bigger point to be made here, and this is why I wanted to talk about this morning. And again, this is where unions could actually do good if they would focus on actually trying to serve workers rather than trying to serve Marxist ideology and sexual perversion like the teachers' unions are doing. These electric vehicles have batteries in them that are supplied by minerals coming largely from the Congo. And those minerals are being mined largely by child slave labor. And the companies are paying a pittance for getting these minerals out of the ground, while the people in the Congo, and there may be some other areas as well, but this is a major source of these minerals. The people in the Congo are living an impoverished existence. Children are dying in mining collapses. They are dying of lung diseases and other problems because they're working literally from sunup to sundown to try to dig out enough to buy, to exchange for a little money for themselves and their families in order to survive. They're not being educated. They're not going to school. And all these leftists who are crying about climate change are not even acknowledging that there's a great crime against humanity going on in the Congo and probably other places in order to get these very important minerals that are needed in order to build these electric batteries. And that's, in part, what the United Auto Workers Union is competing with: slave labor. And by the way, these people are always crying racism, racism, racism. I don't hear them talking about this racist exploitation of these Africans and these children being used to mine for these minerals. And you know, frankly, folks, it has convinced me that until this whole thing is straightened out, we all need to be opposed to electric batteries, car batteries. I should say electric vehicles, not electric batteries, obviously. Electric vehicles. Because you know, those batteries, folks, are enormous. They're very heavy. There's even discussion that if we go to all electric vehicles, what the added weight on the roads is going to do, that we might have to retool our entire highway system because the vehicles are going to be so much heavier than they are using gasoline-powered vehicles. Nobody's even thought about that. Forget about all the charging stations that you need. But the weight of these batteries is so heavy that if we reach a point where all the cars on the road have these big, heavy batteries in them, our roads and our bridge systems weren't built for that weight. And there's concern that there may be some major disasters awaiting us if we rush headlong into this. I think there's every reason to be opposed to electric batteries until we get, again, electric vehicles. Forgive me, I keep saying electric batteries, but you get what I mean, electric batteries in these vehicles, until we get a handle on the humanitarian as well as environmental impact. Because here again, remember, all this mining does a job on the environment. Not to mention the job it does on the people. I read this book, and if you haven't read it, you should. It's called Cobalt Red by Siddharth Kara. Cobalt Red. And I'll tell you, folks, this book will break your heart. As he outlines traveling in the Congo and visiting these mines, as he outlines the impact that this stuff is having on the people of the Congo, and how this is being exploited around the world without any concern for what it's doing to these people who are being used as slave labor in order to get these minerals out of the ground. I mean, the hypocrisy is just astounding. Cobalt Red is called Siddharth, S-I-D-D-H-A-R-T-H, Siddharth Kara, K-A-R-A. And by the way, the winner of the Frederick Douglass Book Prize. So, and it's Cobalt Red, How the Blood of the Congo Powers Our Lives. How the blood of the Congo powers our lives. You know, every now and then I read a book that I want to read twice or maybe 3 times. This is a book that I'd like to read a second or third time because it is so illuminating, and it's an issue, again, that is directly impacting our lives because our government is pushing us headlong toward these electric vehicles. Our union workers are competing with slave labor in building these electric vehicles, and yet the very people who are pushing this stuff are crying against racism and against slavery. They want to talk about the slavery that ended 160 years ago. They don't want to talk about the slavery that's going on in the Congo right now, where primarily, European industrialists and technological giants are exploiting black slave labor today. It just, I mean, this stuff is just disgusting. So on that basis, too, I side with the United Auto Workers because it is not fair for their wages to be suppressed because they are competing with the manufacture of these electric vehicles that are in effect being produced in large measure, at least, because without the batteries, you don't have vehicles, right? I mean, without the batteries, you don't have vehicles. The batteries are the essential element. They don't run without that. Without that, it's just a frame, it's just nothing. And those batteries are being produced, by and large, by slave labor in the Congo. But they don't want to talk about that, do they? Well, I'll tell you what, as a presidential candidate, if I were to enter the White House, I would require an investigation into this, because I don't want products being sold in our country, a country that has renounced slavery, a country that wants to be fair to all people. I don't want batteries being sold in our country and vehicles being sold in our country that are built on slave labor. And I don't want our workers in our country competing with slave labor. So, look, there you have it. A little commentary on unions, something I haven't talked about before. But as I've said before, folks, I'm prepared to address any issue you want to talk about, any issue. But I still believe that what ails America and what we've got to come back to is that America needs God. Because without that, we are simply shifting the chairs on the deck of the Titanic. Jesus said, what does it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul? Well, I'd say the same thing about a nation. What does it profit a nation if it gains the whole world and loses its soul? And what can a nation give in return for its soul? And by its soul, I mean the spiritual condition of the people. If we walk away from Almighty God, then we turn our backs on what America was established to be, and America as we know it ends. To me, it's just that plain and simple, that without God, America is doomed. And it's only a matter of when the ultimate cataclysm comes. And by cataclysm, I mean cataclysm could mean becoming a tyrannical, totalitarian nation as opposed to a free constitutional republic. Well, I've got to go. I'm over time. God bless each and every one of you. I always enjoy spending time with you. I'm going to be with you all week because I've got a lot of internal campaign stuff to take care of. But I will be launching out again, I think the week after, next week. I'm headed, of course, back to Iowa. All of you in New Hampshire, stand by. I'm coming to New Hampshire. I'm coming to South Carolina. I will be there. Takes money to do all of that. So pray for me and contribute to the campaign so that we can continue to take this message across the nation. And once the media finally catches on, you know, they are so far behind that they think they're ahead. But once they catch on, that is going to help us, because then Christians all over the nation are going to find out that there is a Christian candidate, a biblical worldview candidate in the race. And I really believe that many of them are going to rally to my side, to the great consternation of the Republican establishment, the mainstream media, and many others. But I don't care, because if God be for us, who can be against us? Nobody, not successfully. God bless each and every one of you. So stand up, step up, speak up, refuse to back up, because we cannot be defeated if we will not quit, because we are on God's side.